जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य परम जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य सता श्री श्रीमद भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी महाराज प्रभुपाद की अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की नामाचार्य हरिदास ठाकुर की प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासुति गौर भक्त वृंद की श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की वृंदावन धाम की मथुरा धाम की जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की गंगा माई की यमुना माई की भक्ति देवी तुलसी महारानी की समवेत भक्त वृंद की गौर प्रेमानंदे all glories to the simple devotees, all glories to the simple devotees, all glories to the simple devotees, all glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga, all glories to Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. So today we are reading from the third canto, 20th chapter, verse number 26. Pahi mam paramatmamste Pahi mam paramatmamste Preshanenarshajam prajaha Preshanenashtajam prajaha Tam ima yabitam papa Tam ima yabitum papa Upakramanti mam prabho Upakramanti mam prabho Pahi mam paramatmamste Preshaneshnashtajam prajaha Tam ima yabitum papa Upakramanti mam prabho Pahi mam paramatmamste Preshanenashtajam prajaha Ta ima yabitum papa Upakramanti mam prabho. Mataji. Pahi mam paramatmamste Prasanenashajam prajaha Taima yabitum papa Upakramanti pram prabhu. Pahi, protect. Mam, may. Param Atman, O Supreme Lord, Te your Prasannena by order Ashrajam I created Prajaha living entities Taha Imaha those very persons Yabitum to have sex Papaha sinful beings Upakramanti are approaching Mam me Prabhu O Lord. Translation by His Divine Grace AC. Brahma is speaking to the Supreme Lord. Brahma is speaking to the Lord. Yeah. Lord Brahma approaching the Lord addressed him thus, My Lord, please protect me from these sinful demons who were created by me under your order. They are infuriated by an appetite for sex and have come to attack me. Purport. It appears that the homosexual appetite of males for each other is created in this episode of the creation of the demons by Brahma. In other words, the homosexual appetite of a man for another man is demonic and is not for any sane male in the ordinary course of life. Thus ends the purport. It's a short purport, but very powerful purport. Okay. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurum Ilitam Ena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Ena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagani Lalita Shri Vishakhanmitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Krupa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay. So it looks like the topic for today is about homosexual appetite. Usually, I would thank the Archita Prabhu for giving the opportunity. But it so happened that he covered 2 verses the last Saturday. So this verse is supposed to be tomorrow, but looks like I have to speak on this verse. So it looks like it's just a providence that I have to speak on the homosexual appetite today. So I know that this is kind of a very controversial topic, right? Especially in the religious organizations, and also very sensitive topic in the society in general as well. And there has been strong opinions on the either side. Also, you might have seen the news that maybe yesterday or day before yesterday, the Pope has sanctioned. I mean, he didn't sanction exactly. He just said that the priest can bless the homosexuals. But he said that the marriage cannot resemble the regular marriage, correct? And a lot of people have been having different opinions about this homosexual marriage, and the Pope changing his opinion and policy just like 2 days back. So anyway, especially this purport, and especially the last line here, which says that the homosexual appetite for a man to another man is demoniac and is not for any sane man in ordinary course of life. So usually, many people use this last line to kind of justify some of the opinions which are kind of against the homosexuality. Usually trying to characterize them by in different ways, saying that like the homosexuals are demons, they are like extremely sinful, and they should kind of stay away from the society, or different opinions. So it all comes to this last line in the purport, which a lot of people try to justify or base their arguments upon for the opinions which is against homosexuality. So anyway, regardless, one thing we all agree is that this topic is a kind of very sensitive topic, and we must, at least I'll be very careful in discussing or explaining this topic. So what I would like to do here is that instead of like putting forward my opinions or my understandings, right? So what I would like to do is that I would like to introduce a topic which is not very widely discussed, but it's kind of like a very new topic. It's not a topic, but it's just I'll tell you what it is. It's called as the hermeneutics. You know what? Have you heard the name before? Hermeneutics, right? It's how you understand your own tradition, how you especially it becomes very much relevant in the religious organizations. Like how do they understand their own texts in pertaining to a specific context, especially those texts or those statements which are kind of controversial in nature. So I would like to introduce this principle of hermeneutics in a very briefly, so that we can apply some of those principles in understanding this topic. As you all know, the hermeneutics, this is a definition given by ISKCON Shastric Advisory Committee. What is hermeneutics? It's basically a discipline and methodology that considers how to appropriately study, understand, apply, explain, and perpetuate the teachings of Guru, Sadhu, Shastra. Such a discipline comes from the Vaishnava tradition itself. So this is not something which is very new. This is already existing in the Vaishnava tradition, that how you apply the hermeneutics principle, especially in trying to understand some of these sensitive topics. And hermeneutics embraces the theory and method of underpinned by values. For Vaishnavas, proper understandings and teachings are contingent upon the character and realization. So this is very important statement. It is not that just by mere using the logic you can understand everything, but it is also contingent upon the speaker and the hearer's character and their realization as well. It's not that everybody can understand everything. There should be some character and realization as well, especially understanding the conclusions of the hermeneutics. Because any conversation, any Shastric discourse which we have can be put into three categories. Either it can be a Vada, a Jalpa, or Vitanda. So what is Vada? Vada means it's like a constructive, debate by using the proper rules of Nyaya, and by, the aim is to find the truth. That is the whole goal of Vada. And what is Jalpa? Jalpa basically means it's like an argument, right? It's basically argument that I want to make my point and you want to prove your point. Right? Each other is just trying to disprove each other, and that is called as Jalpa. And the last one is called as Vitanda. Vitanda is little bit, what do you call, like an extreme of Jalpa, where you basically doesn't even want to hear other person. You just want to make your point, right? That is called as Vitanda. So our goal here is basically Vada. Means how do we constructively debate, and how do we constructively understand a specific statements in a Shastra by using the principles of hermeneutics. So this is just a screenshot of the recently published hermeneutics manual by ISKCON's Shastric Advisory Committee, and the ISKCON GBC has adopted this. And this is a recent publication. It's in the March 1st, 2021. And some of the core members you can see here. Maybe many of these devotees might have been familiar to you. You even have Dhrutakarma Prabhu also in this, right? Haripashad Prabhu, Dhrutakarma Prabhu, Giriraj Swami, Bhaktivijnana Goswami. Yeah, because even ISKCON has realized this need. How do we understand, these statements, especially the sensitive statements, using the principles of hermeneutics? This topic is actually a very big topic. It takes about like 10 to 20 hours just to present it. I just have 20 minutes to present it. So what I will do is that I'll just give a brief glimpse. What I will do is that I'll try to simplify it as much as possible. just to give a glimpse of what exactly the hermeneutics is and how the principles can be applied to understand any sensitive subjects. Because it's relevant to us because we're all preachers, we're all preaching, right? So that means that we all having constant interaction, dialogue with devotees and public in general. So we must be conscious like how we are presenting. It's all about presentation, right? One thing is what is your content, the second thing is that how we are presenting it. We don't want to present something which is like as if you're imposing a doctrine on somebody or our ideology on somebody, right? So both are important. The presentation also is very much important, and that's what makes a good preacher as well. Even Prabhupada also had a lot of discussions with Professor, right? They all love, all the Vaishnavas, they love discussions. It's just the way how we do that, that's the question. So as explained in the Bhagavatam also, my dear king, the servants of Lord Vishnu are always very expert in logic and arguments. After hearing the statements of the Yamadutas, they replied as follows. So here is the statement of Bhagavatam which, emphasize this discussion based upon logic and arguments. And also in Chaitanya Charitamrita it is said, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Daya Karaha Vichara Karite Chitta Pabe Chamatkara. If you are indeed interested in logic and argument, kindly apply it to the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. If you do so, you will find it to be strikingly wonderful. So that's a background for hermeneutics. So now let's dive into that. Basically, hermeneutics, there are 3 steps. So the first step is that the relationship of the topic to oneself. Okay, now you selected a topic to discuss. Okay, first of all, how is it even relevant to us? What is the relationship of that topic being discussed to oneself? So we need to establish that. That's the first step. And when you're doing these first steps, there are like a list of questions we need to answer. There's a long list, but I'm not going to go through all those questions. I'll just kind of tell you a few questions. Like, first of all, do I have good sadhana? Right? Because good sadhana is a contingency that you have the good consciousness to understand the subject which you're trying to understand. And the next question is that do I have the mood of surrender and service to Srila Prabhupada and my spiritual master? And do I have any cultural or personal biases of the topic discussed? Because a lot of times people have different biases, even before they discuss a certain subject. They need to make sure that, at least they should be aware that if they're having any biases towards this topic that being discussed. And the last, it's not the last thing, but at least here, is that, okay, and am I open to changing my opinion in proper understandings, right? Or am I here just to make my point, or am I here just to make a jalpa or a vitanda? So these are the very important things. Like, this lays the foundation before we kind of apply any hermeneutics principles. That's the step number 1. And the step number 2 is that what is the relationship of the topic that we are discussing with the Siddhanta, right? So under this step, there are again 4 further steps. Like, now you have a statement which you're trying to understand, or a topic which you're trying to understand. So that statement, is it like an explanation or like a restatement of the Siddhanta? Or is it like an application of the Siddhanta? Or is it a statement which is like supporting the Siddhanta? Or is it something just like outright against the Siddhanta? Right? So what is Siddhanta? Siddhanta, first of all, let me try to clarify what is Siddhanta. For us, for the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, the Siddhanta is actually beautifully encapsulated by, Dashamula Tattva by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. As many of you may be already aware of the Dashamula Tattva. So that's like the summary, the conclusion of all the Gaudiya Vaishnava Siddhanta. As you can see here, the Lord Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He has his external, interior, inferior and marginal energies. He also has his internal, superior or spiritual energies, and so on. So whatever we discuss in the Bhagavatam, ultimately you can just connect to one of these 10 points, because this is the core Siddhanta what we are trying to follow here. So now we must understand that this statement, any statement in the Bhagavatam, you can actually put in one of these 4 categories. I'll give you some examples. The first one, explanation or restatement of a Siddhanta. Let's say, for example, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Mame Vamsho Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. Krishna is saying the living entities are his condition. The living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. This is a simple statement, right? So now if you have to tie it back to one of the 10, the statements of Siddhanta, what it would be? I mean, I would rather have it as an interaction, but we don't have that much time, so I will just go ahead. So this actually ties to the fourth and the fifth point. The fourth point is that he has his parts and parcels, the living entities who are spiritual by nature, and the living entities in the material world are conditioned by external energy. So that these are the 2 points. You can tie it back this statement to these 2 points. And what is the nature of the statements in this category? Because this is nothing but explaining the Siddhanta, so all the statements in this category are basically eternal and universal and doesn't depend upon a specific context. Like you can just apply it anywhere and everywhere and this doesn't change. So this is the nature of the statements under this category. And the next one is the application of the Siddhanta. For example, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, Yuddhaya Krita Nishchayaha, means therefore get up with determination and fight. So Lord Krishna is telling to Arjuna that you fight. So now this is like an application of the Siddhanta. This is not like exactly Siddhanta, it's just more of an application. Now which point you can tie it to in one of the 10 points? It's actually 9. To achieve the love of God, one should practice devotional service. For Arjuna, fighting is a devotional service, right? That is how he's applying. There is an application of the Siddhanta. So what is the nature of the statements in this category? The nature is that these are highly contextual. This always depends on a specific context. This is not like universal, like you cannot just take this statement and tell to everybody you go and fight, right? That's how Russia understood the Bhagavad Gita as promoting violence, and that's how they banned it. But that's not the correct way of understanding. That's not our Siddhanta, that's just an application to a specific context. And the next statement are the statements which are actually supporting the Siddhanta, or this helps us to understand the Siddhanta or practically and work towards the realization of the Siddhanta. For example, when a statement is made like, when I have killed this diplomatic Vishnu, the demigods from whom Lord Vishnu is the life and soul, will lose the source of their life and wither away. So the point we are trying to make here is that Vishnu is the source of all the demigods. That's a premise, that's a foundation. And of course, demons are making these statements, even though they understood that Vishnu is the source of all demigods, but that's the underlying principle. And this statement is nothing but a statement which is kind of supporting the Siddhanta in a negative way, because it's a statement by the demons, not by the demigods. So the nature, okay, this again, as I said, this can be tied back to one of the 10 points. That the point which is applicable here is that he has his external, inferior or marginal energy, Maya. Means the Lord is the source of all the demigods. He's the source, ultimate source. That's what he's trying to say here. Now, what is the nature of the statements under this category? Actually, most of the controversial statements are actually in this category, in this third category, because these statements are heavily depending upon the speaker's mood and the varieties of meanings, what you can interpret out of that, and also the historical and cultural context, genre, and hierarchy, and its relationship with other statements. So understanding these statements, especially in this third category, is actually very much challenging. Of course, one solution, what usually people do is that, I mean, why do you even have such a statement? Why don't you just remove it altogether, make it more simpler, right? That's one way of looking at it. Then, that's what even the early Christians have done, right? In the Old Testament, New Testaments. Basically, as I explained in my previous class, they were not intellectually respected, so they were trying to please the Greek philosophers. So then what they have done is that they kind of removed certain sections or kind of gave an allegorical explanation to some of the Bible statements, so that can appease the Greek philosophers, so that they can gain the intellectual respectability. But fortunately, at least till date, we have not done that. We are just still keeping intact all the instructions as it is, right? Bhagavad Gita as it is. So we're not trying to, give any allegorical explanations or trying to change the meaning altogether. But it's so important for us to very much give for the proper understandings of these things. And the last statements are basically opposing the Siddhanta. These are very simple to understand, right? It's just outright against our Siddhanta, like the statements by Buddha, because the Buddha has denied the Vedas. So any statements by Buddha is just outright, opposing the Siddhanta. That's very simple to understand. So this is step number 2. Step number 1, self-analysis. Step number 2, we understand, we try to see, how to connect it to our core Siddhanta and try to classify under what category this statement is falling under. And step number 3, so this is where we use the hermeneutics tools. I mean, there are many hermeneutics tools, like more like 50 or 100 or even more than that. So, but we won't be doing all those things. Sometimes you just pick and choose a tool which is appropriate for the statement, or sometimes you choose more than one tool. And some of the tools mentioned are like research Prabhupada's application. Like, how did Prabhupada apply that? Okay, it's one thing when you said something, but it's another thing how you apply the thing, right? For you to understand fully, you should understand both. You cannot just say that, oh, you read these things and you get a complete understanding. No, you need to understand both application and the philosophy both together. That's a hermeneutic tool as well. And also we need to see basically what is the mood of the section, right? Because it's a part of a section, a specific section in a book, and what is it talking about? What is the genre, and what is the mood of the section? Is it like some philosophy, or is it like some poetry, or is it giving a narration of something, right? In this context, it's about Brahmas creating different things, right? And we're just trying to connect divine and demonic things to different things which is coming from Brahma. And sometimes there could be some ambiguities in the language as well, right? Because different people speak in a different language. I mean, even though we speak in the same language, there could be some ambiguities, the way it is understood by people in general. And also sometimes it's kind of advised to kind of consult with the other shastras, like what are the other shastras also talking about the same subject, and see what are the other contemporary acharyas also talking about the same subject. So using these tools, basically hermeneutics is not going to tell you right and wrong. That's not the goal of hermeneutics. It's just going to widen your, understanding, so that you get a better understanding of whatever you're trying to understand. So now let's go back to our statement here, the last statement in the purport. What does it Prabhupada say here? In other words, the homosexual appetite for a man for another man is demonic and is not for any sane male in the ordinary course of life. Okay, so first what we'll try to do is that we'll try to tag it to one of the 10 statements. So what it would be out of the 10 statements? Number 5? Yeah, exactly. It's basically saying that the living entities in the material world are conditioned by external energy. That is a underlying, Siddhanta, nothing more than that. It could be many things, either a man, woman, it could be pride, lust, anger. It's all just nothing but the conditions. It's just a different varieties of conditions. And now here we are just discussing about one condition, right? And what's the next thing? The next thing is that, is this statement, is it an explanation or an application or a supporting or something which is opposed to Siddhanta? What it would be? Explanation? Okay. Anyone else like to try? I mean, there's nothing right or wrong. Everybody sees in a different way. So, I mean, I personally feel that it's more like something which is supporting the Siddhanta. That's what I personally feel. I mean, I could be wrong, but, this is something which we discuss, right? This is called as Vada, means, you express, your opinion and I express my opinion, try to understand it more clearly. Because most of the controversial statements fall in this category, something which is supporting the Siddhanta, as I mentioned, because this heavily depends on the speaker's mood and, the varieties of meanings one can interpret out of that, and the cultural and historical background, all those things. Okay, so now, what does it say here? There are two things which we can say. The number 1 point is that homosexual appetite is demonic. That's one clear statement from this purport, right? And the next thing is that homosexual appetite is not ordinary for a sane man. These are the two statements which are kind of obvious and very clear here. But however, again, when different people use this statement to make different, other statements which kind of supports based on this statement, some of the interpretations or understandings could be, homosexual men are demonic. Like, I mean, I heard that, like, people say that homosexual men are demonic, or the homosexual marriage cannot be dharmic. It cannot be like, according to the principles of dharma. Or someone can say homosexual inclinations are sinful and must immediately be given up, right? Because, why do you say that? What is a reference? This purport is a reference. And homosexual nature is like criminal, or sometimes it's punishable in nature, like because it's unnatural, and it can be even compared to like a criminal behavior, right? Criminal behavior like stealing, adultery, sometimes they equate these both things. So, again, that's just a human psychology, is that sometimes when you see a statement, it's sometimes natural for people to take some extreme opinions. For the same statement, different people have different extreme opinions, right? Let's say, even for example, somebody commits a crime. Or somebody could say that, oh, you know what, he must be hanged right now. It's just a heinous crime. Or somebody else could say that, no, you know what, that's just, I just feel sorry for him. Just forgive him, pardon him, like that, right? So we need to understand exactly even how to gauge, like how much, even the gauging is also kind of very much important, especially understanding these statements. So that is where applying the hermeneutics tools becomes even more important, so that we don't take any extreme stance. Okay, so let's go on to the step number 3. Step number 3 is that how did Prabhupada deal with these issues, right? Again, I mean, I'm not an expert here, and I heard many things, but not many of them are hanging like an authentic reference. So, but my understanding is that Prabhupada actually discouraged homosexual appetite, correct? That's one thing for sure. And also he said that basically you just have to control it, the homosexual appetite. And of course, Prabhupada didn't discriminate it, right? Even though he's aware of that some of his disciples are having the homosexual appetite, but he would just give the opportunities just like any other disciple, right? And some of them even are also given some leadership positions. So again, Prabhupada, that's application. That's how we understand how Prabhupada applied this statement as well. It's just not enough to just read the purport and just try to conclude that, oh, it's all demonic. No, you should also see the application. And also, if you see the other Shastras, okay, this is one problem with the Shastras, especially regarding this topic. That is that the difficulty is that there are not too many clear instructions, especially in the Shastras, or at least in the mainstream Shastras, like all the Upanishad, Itihasas, the Puranas. There's not too much description about the homosexual appetite as such. But we can find some references, like Shikandi, the king Sudyumna. Do you know King Sudyumna? Have you heard the name of the king? Yeah, he became, he stepped onto a territory which is not supposed to step, and he got cursed that he become a woman. And then again he prayed to Lord Shiva and said that, okay, you know what, you can be woman for 1 month and next month you'll be man, something like that. And when he was a woman, he gave birth to the child by uniting with the son of moon. And that is how the Chandra Vamsha came. So that's King Sudyumna. And also Arjuna also, there is 1 year in incognito by the curse of the Urvashi. He has to, take the form of a woman. But again, these examples are not very perfect examples. The reason is because when Shikandi or Sudyumna or Arjuna, when they were, taking that role, they're like perfect men, or they're perfect female. They're not like mixed, no. Like when Shikandi was there, Shikandi was like, he was perfectly acting like a man, and he was heading one of the Akshohinis. It's not like he was having some mixed behavior. No, it's not like that. So even these examples cannot be like very perfect examples to understand what is the Shastras trying to say. But okay, even if you look at the Sanskrit language also, English language is not a gender specific in the nouns and pronouns, but Sanskrit language is very gender specific. And they do recognize masculine, feminine, and neutral. So there are 3 genders, right? A lot of people these days say that you have to have a 3rd gender. Actually, Sanskrit already has a 3rd gender. It does recognize that category. So they have 3 genders altogether. And there are some very remote statements in different Shastras, which are not like mainstream Shastras, is that in Manusmriti you can see that a twice born man who indulges in unnatural intercourse with another man must bath with his clothes. Or one who engages in a crooked intercourse will fall down from one's jati. And also in the Mahabharata there are some different statements. Basically it's trying to discourage the sex between the same gender. So these are some of the statements which we can find in the Shastras. There are not too many things which we can find. But however, if you try to understand what exactly is the root cause for all this, this homosexuality, is that in the Garbhadana Samskara it is basically written that during the intercourse, if the father's seed is more potent, the child becomes male, and if the mother's seed is stronger, the child becomes female. And when the seats are equal, the child becomes neither male nor female, or napumsaka, or someone of the third category. And even in the Hari Bhakti Vilas also, Sanatana Goswami mentions about, in the chapter 4, he mentions about the Garbhadana Samskara, right? Because Prabhupada, many times he mentions about the Garbhadana Samskara, that how it is very much important for someone who wants to have a child to follow a Garbhadana Samskara. And even Sanatana Goswami explains this in Hari Bhakti Vilas, that how these constellations, under different constellations when you do, you have a different results. And how even this Tritiya Prakriti, how this homosexual appetite, or the homosexuals also give, are given birth because of conceived in inappropriate times. So this is also an instruction for all the devotees also, that Garbhadana Samskara should be taken very seriously, right? It is just not sufficient, just to conceive, but also it should be done in a very meticulous way. It's like an experiment, right? It's like a chemistry or a physics experiment. Yeah, everything has to be like perfectly done. That's Garbhadana Samskara. And also in the Artha Shastra we can see basically which gives the guidelines for the kings, and over there is also a punishment for those who persecute the people of the third nature. And also it's encouraged for the kings to give the employment for these people in the third nature. So from this analysis, one thing what we can try to understand is that some of the observations, what I could say is that, okay, so homosexuals are someone who has actually recognized as a separate category. There's no doubt in that. It's not that, oh, homosexuals are, someone, who has to just give up and just identify either with man and a female. No, I mean, they are already they are already recognized as a separate category. And homosexuality is basically unnatural and is very much discouraged, right? And it is basically considered as some sort of a contamination. But here's the thing. It is not like it is severely punished. It's not like, you do that, you're gonna execute somebody. No, not like that. Some people take that extreme steps. But if you see the Manusmriti, or, as I mentioned previously, it is discouraged, but however, the atonement is not that severe, because people who are born of that nature, how much can you help, right? And also it is basically make sure that the kings are given protection to those category of people as well, and also employed, and also given protection and given a punishment those who attack them. And the general rules of dharma are actually not fully applicable, because if you read the Manusmriti, there is a very clear instruction for the man and for the woman. It's not that they don't know what there is. It's not that Manusmriti doesn't know there is a third category. They know that, but they never gave anything specific, because most of the dharma principles actually is not really applied to them. And also ultimately, from the way of the acharyas, we can see that no matter what sexual appetite one may have, but ultimately one can become a devotee and practice a devotional service. So again, the purpose for this class is basically for me to introduce these principles of hermeneutics, and especially when devotees are discussing any sensitive subjects, how they can apply these principles so that they can have a more constructive criticism or analysis or so on a specific subject matter. And yeah, I guess so. So it's 8:29, so I would like to conclude here. I don't know if this class is to your satisfactory, but I just want to share some points, nothing more than that. Okay, thank you. Archita Prabhu has a point to make.
Hare Krishna, thank you for your intelligent and sensitive way of dealing with this subject. Prabhupada made some statements, obviously they're considered controversial to those who are conditioned. Generally, they fall in the category of statements about women, statements about blacks, and statements about this topic, homosexuality. But Prabhupada showed by his practical application that you have to see beyond these categories. For instance, on Sunday, in Sunday's lecture, many of you were here, Prabhupada made a statement that blacks are never Brahmanas. Brahmanas are light colored. So their ears may burn if they think themselves to be black. But Prabhupada discouraged thinking like that. And when, our Bhaktitirtha Maharaj went to Prabhupada when he was a brahmachari and said, some of your disciples are racist. And Prabhupada said, if you continue thinking of yourself as being black, how are you going to make any progress? Yeah. So first of all, you have to get beyond these misconceptions of who you are. And practically, Prabhupada gave second initiation to those who were externally black, like myself. I got second initiation directly from Prabhupada in his room in Mayapur in 1976. So if Prabhupada was prejudiced against blacks, why would he give black people second initiation? You see? So we have to see beyond the categories the misconceptions of who we think we are. That I think I'm a white male or a black female or this or that. We're none of those things. Anartha upasaman shakshat, bhakti yoga madokta. And that's what bhakti is meant for, to bring us beyond these misconceptions of who we think we are, and therefore how we look at the world and how we apply our energy in the world. So Prabhupada again showed in all of those categories, he made strong statements that people could say are against women, but he gave initiation to women that wasn't never done in other sampradayas. He gave second initiation to women. He allowed them to preach publicly, like Yamuna in India and others. So Prabhupada made statements, but he himself gave practical application that was beyond those apparent negative statements in all of those categories. Like you said, he gave initiation to those who were externally homosexual and even gave them responsible positions within the society. So was he blind? No. Prabhupada knew that the spirit soul is beyond all of these categories, and by the process of bhakti can overcome any of these negative influences. Hare Krishna.
Sure. Okay. Sachitanya Prabhu.
Haribo Prabhu, thank you very much for this presentation. And personally, when I came across with all this topic, and I came to one conclusion that actually it can narrow to one point. Jivera Swarupa Hoy Krishnera Nitya Das. If we just stick to, at least for me, stick to this point that we're all servants of Krishna.
Yeah.
And then when we fall in the material condition, we're all contaminated. Prabhupada says this material world is a contaminated place. So we all have some kind of disease in which we need to recover. And how to view this point? Sometimes we also, like you make a lot of analysis there. Srila Prabhupada, one time someone was having this difficulty in gender. He said, just made up your mind and serve Krishna. Yeah. So the pure devotee sees, is this person attracted to Krishna? Because even someone who might not be in that category of homosexual, just you can say so-called normal, like, couple. If you're not serving Krishna, you're still in a diseased condition.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you very much. Okay, so Savash wants to make a point.
Thank you for a nice presentation. It was really good. Just to say a little something more about that, and that is that Srila Prabhupada initiated. He gave Brahman initiation, and not only that, but sannyas initiation to devotees that he knew were homosexual. Yeah. It wasn't a mystery or maybe or yeah, but it was actually a known fact. And I know for a fact that I had conversations with these particular individuals many, many years ago. And it's applicable across the board. A person can be very sexually agitated, and it's demoniac for him to go out and try to have sex with someone, even if it's a woman for that matter. Yeah. So the bottom line is this sex activity. And all of us in Krishna consciousness have to control that habit, or that desire, if we want to make spiritual advancement. And these devotees did wonderful things. I know one sannyasi, he went to a country all by himself, and he started the Krishna conscious movement. And so it was based on the principle of devotional service and serving the spiritual master and becoming purified. So we don't want to look at someone that's homosexual and think, well, what's the matter with you, you demon, you crazy person. They're born with that particular desire, more or less, It's not something that they just kind of want to do, but they're created with it by past activity. But we should give them a clear understanding of what we practice, and if they can do that, they should be considered a Vaishnava or Vaishnavi, and we should give them all encouragement to progress in spiritual life.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. Jayanta Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Controls this ambient mic. It doesn't need to go all the way up as high as the others. This is about where it should be. It's just so that you get some background sound